Welcome back to the Teacher's AI Cafe. I'm Kane, a teacher and a parent who wants AI to give us back our time. I share practical classroom-tested AI strategies to cut down your workload, improve your feedback and reduce stress so you can get your evenings back and be more present with your friends and family. No jargon, just actionable steps. Grab your mug. Now let's get going. Welcome back to the channel and thanks for joining me today. In this episode, I'm actually going to put my career practitioner hat on. So obviously on my other podcasts, I often talk about my history. It's my big love. I'm also a specialist computing teacher. That's why I like to combine the two and why AI really interests me. But the last 3 or 4 years now, I've been a career practitioner, retrained a department when I got a postgraduate qualification within that. So I'm putting that hat on today because I think this is important as teachers in having those conversations with our students, particularly in the high school environment. And this is the question that's been sitting at the back of almost every student conversation that I have, or what teachers are thinking about in terms of preparing our students for post-school is, what does AI actually mean for the jobs my students will be walking into? And what can we do inside schools to prepare them for that really well? The obvious thing you're hearing advice is now is get into the trades. AI won't take that, but it'll have impact in there in different manners or different forms at some point. But trades is definitely not a job that's going to disappear soon. But obviously not everyone wants to go into the trades. But we're going to take a holistic look at the whole sort of industry, what's happening, what jobs are getting created, because when a new technology comes on, existing jobs get destroyed, new ones get created, has been the process all the way through human history. So we're going to break this into 3 parts. First, we're going to look at the new jobs that exist today only because of AI. Then we're going to look at how existing businesses are already changing their hiring, especially at entry and graduate level. And that is, the data is based on a lot of data, government and business surveys and data that's coming out. Then there's primarily in Australia and I guess the US and the UK, the Western speaking, English speaking world. Finally, this also means what skills we need to deliberately build into our students. How do we work with our colleagues with things like maths, English, science and humanities to actually do that so our students are actually on the right path and get the most opportunities when they leave school? I've said a lot of them are still going into further education and they'll have their own programs, initiatives, and we can see that happening already, but let's look at it in terms of a high school context. So let's start off with what jobs have been created in the world of AI since November 2022. We'll start with the good news. AI is not only taking away jobs, it's also creating roles simply did not exist before. And same with the web. There's no such thing as web design, interface, SEO experts. These now exist. So you're starting to see job titles like a prompt engineer or AI prompt specialist, generative AI engineer or large language model engineer, AI ethics officer, AI trainer, data annotator, data curator, AI product manager, AI oversight specialist in such areas as call centers compliance. So these are very much, a lot of them is human-related jobs. And I'm just going to briefly go through what some of the different ones are in their current model today. So a prompt engineer spends the day designing and refining instructions that go into things like ChatGPT, so they can give reliable and safe outputs. Part of it's writing, part of it's actually systems thinking. The job relies on strong language skills, understanding how the model itself behaves, and the discipline to test and improve prompts systematically. Increasingly, the advertisements for these roles asking for a lot written, excellent communication, some coding or scripting skills, and domain knowledge in at least one field, such as, say, finance, law, healthcare, education, usually associated with the business that's taking them on. So you've got a good context of how they work, and then you're applying really your literacy skills, thinking skills. The generative AI specialist, LLM engineer, is more technical. That person takes a model, connects it to a product, database workflow. They work through things like Python, cloud platforms, worry about security concerns, more like traditional software engineering type pathway, but obviously with a focus on AI tools. The ethics officer sits in a different space again. This is where the humanities, social sciences, and laws meet technology. Their job's to decide how AI is used responsibly within that organization, thinking about bias, and a lot of interesting stages of bias coming out of AI. Discrimination, privacy, things like transparency, how many people, I guess, people from things like philosophy, law, public policy, sociology, who learn enough about AI and know how to ask the right questions, but they're not necessarily technical people. And the more accessible end, you got things like AI trainers and data annotators. These are people who label data, rate out AI outputs, help build the data sets that models learn from. And their roles often sit at entry level, so strong demands, strong literacy, attention to detail. In some cases, it's their remote jobs. They can be early to step into the AI ecosystems for students that are not yet have a degree, maybe come from a vocational TAFE pathway in Australia. Things like AI product managers, AI oversight specialists in a call center, for example, may move from taking 500 staff taking calls to a small group to supervise their AI system handling complex cases and monitor quality and risk. This is a new job, even though it grows directly out of the old one. And that's what we're seeing a lot of jobs is some jobs existing, but the skill sets are changing with this environment. Now, the Commonwealth Bank in Australia's biggest bank, apparently at one point, the most valuable bank in the world, despite being not that big, got rid of all their call centre staff in Australia and replaced it with AI. But apparently it didn't go well because about 3 months later, they wanted to hire them all back and put the old system back in place. So lots of teething problems, but it's definitely a way they want to do. And I saw even 3-4 years ago before AI, you Google, it was longer than that now, it was about 5 years ago, one of my computer science students was showing me how Google was using machine learning and voice synthesizing to actually order pizzas and things. And so this is just a natural evolution of technology. It's been around for a while. I guess as people in the careers areas, the key point is that these roles illustrate AI is not a single narrow technical field. It's like when I talk about people in IT. IT is a massive field. There's lots of different roles within that. So when you say you go off to do computing, there isn't one job. There's hundreds, or I say quite a few thousand different specialties within that you can then get your teeth into that interest you. And there's also the layer that runs across many sectors that this will come into. So AI will affect all sectors in different regards and different levels of complexity, and that will change over time. And what we're seeing is students need strong language skills, critical thinking, and ethical awareness so they can find a place in their AI sort of ecosystem. So just as much as students who actually love coding, and I know the craze was a few years ago, everyone's got to learn to code. Now AI can do it for you much easier. You got things like vibe coding. But at the same time, you need to understand the structures and the processes and the technology and the algorithms behind it to use AI effectively. It's like the old day when calculators came in, people won't understand, but still in maths, you teach them the steps in the process and the formulas, then they use that within the calculators to get the answers. Having that understanding gives great depth and makes you more effective. So how are businesses changing their hiring? And this is based on government reports and private sector reports and things that's been coming out in the last 12 months. So it is very patchworky at the moment, and it's difficult to get a full understanding of how AI is being used within this environment and how we can, I guess it's affecting the classic early career pathways for many people. And a lot of the issue with the data, and I know myself, and they're talking about productivity, a lot of businesses aren't using AI in their data. They're not showing it's not building wealth at this point. But what they're not recording is people being more productive in the same jobs they're doing at the moment, but not necessarily showing up in business or business figures, profitability, also in GDP, because they're being more efficient. Therefore, they're actually creating more time for themselves within the business while doing the same output. There isn't the stage where they're seeing the results of increased productivity. It's there, it's happening. I'm far more productive as a teacher using AI, but I get paid the same salary. I don't create any more wealth on top of GDP. That, in terms of my work-life balance, massively improved. I am far more productive, but it doesn't show up in the economic figures because I'm still getting paid the same. Okay, let's have a look at some of the reports. So the World Economic Forum reports that about 40% of employers expect to reduce headcount in roles where AI can automate a significant part of the workload. This does not mean 40% of all jobs will vanish. It means a large proportion of routine roles will shrink, and the people doing those jobs will actually take on other roles and responsibilities. A simulation out of MIT, Oak Ridge National Lab, estimates about 11 to 12% of US jobs workforce could be in principle replaced by AI systems, representing over $1 trillion in salaries. That's a full figure or not, we don't know, because it's a very large pool of exposed workers at risk. In the UK, shows that several million low-skilled roles could disappear by about 2035. So 10 years away. If AI automation had fully rolled out across sectors such as retail, basic admin, and customer service. And we already see that. It was before AI, and I talk about it with my students, the jobs that disappeared in the fast food industry in Australia. And I did see this in Europe as well on my recent holidays, that, like I said, you don't have lots of teenagers doing counter work. You've got the automated system where you go in, or you order it through your app, or you got the kiosk, a digital kiosk. You do your order and it's sent to the kitchen, and then they call your name or your number, and then you pick it up. Didn't really see this in the US when I was there. Definitely saw it in Europe. So this is when they talk about change, things like retail, just see hospitality's aspect of retail in terms of, say, fast food. You're seeing all these entry-level jobs that a lot of teenagers or young people would get into first, build a track record of being reliable, turning up on time, be able to learn, are disappearing. There's not as many jobs there. So alongside these big headline numbers, I guess there's been these quieter sort of concrete shifts. And some of these are the large consulting firms, professional services, particularly here in Australia and the US and the UK, has frozen started cutting salaries or even positions for graduates. So here in Australia, we have a graduate program. So every year in the government and the private sector that they get graduates coming out of university and they develop a development pathway. That has actually declined. They're not taking as many graduates already into that system. And this has got a couple of issues with the business. One, where do you get your future workers from? And this is how they're trained up, how their business works and developed. At the same time, they're thinking that they're not taking as many people on because a lot of the jobs that graduates are doing, they expect to replace those particular jobs. So what we see there is the traditional pyramid model where firms hire large numbers of entry-level staff due to repetitive work, and a small number rise through the ranks up through the management is under pressure because AI can perform many of those repetitive tasks. In reality, we don't want to do them anyway. But like I said, we've got to create these jobs opportunities for these graduates, this pool of workers coming through. So graduate entry-level jobs such as things like data entry, basic bookkeeping, routine report writing, even the legal research for lawyers. So those first-line customer support are no longer growing the way they once did. So in some sectors, they're shrinking. In other words, AI is eating away at exactly those jobs that many of our students would previously have used the first rung on the ladder, like the fast food industry when kids are in high school. The second trend is along this is a global study found AI jobs are showing that positions requiring AI skills attract significantly wage premium at this stage. On average, more than 50% pay higher than similar roles without AI. So skill requirements in AI-exposed occupations are also changing far more quickly than other jobs. Some estimates suggesting that the mix of skills demanded in those roles is evolving at around 60% above the rate seen elsewhere. Put simply, employers are more cautious about large-scale hiring of people because they think AI might be able to perform it. If they hire them now, they may not be able to remove them later on because of, I guess, contracts and things like that. So they're being conservative. They're more willing to invest in workers that can combine their existing discipline with AI skills. And this is important. When people talk about jobs replacing that, a lot of these jobs won't get replaced. They will simply get replaced by a worker who has those AI skills compared to someone who doesn't. Demand is rising for mid-level workers who know how to use AI, that's what I said, and you can check their output and apply human judgment on top of that. I know a few years ago, part of my role, I went to a data science thing, and they were talking about how AI and machine learning at that point was pre-AI could scan things and give them far more accurate details, such as medical scans, than a doctor could. But the human still had the final say and judgment within that. And that's how a lot of AI systems are evolving at this point. So for our students, that means the labour market they're walking to will be narrower at the bottom. So there won't be as many of those opportunities that exist before. More fluid in the middle and more demanding in terms of the skills mix, depending on the industry. And this is outside the trades. This is more for your traditional white-collar office type work or professional type work. So what can we do this about? So what can we actually do this about? Let's try that again. What can we actually do about this in schools? Now, high schools, our job is to prepare. And for me, the core point of high school is not necessarily all the subjects, it's the ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn something. And that's a core skill we want our students to take all the way through school. From school into further study and then into their career. We're constantly evolving and changing. And all the data about different careers that students will have, they need to be able to learn and adapt. Even if they go into the trades, they need to be able to learn and adapt because trades and ideas and thinking techniques change over time. They need those core skills. So what do we turn to AI? Looking at the students that aren't going into trades initially, how do we prepare them? And this is how we should be preparing our students. And as career practitioners or careers people, we need to work with our teachers and explain that these are the skills we need to do and be proactive about it. And a lot of things I'm going to suggest teachers are already doing. Like I said, it's developing those skills with more emphasis and then working AI into it, which I'm not going to go into today, into our programs to develop the students with the skills they need. So we cannot control what graduate programs do. We cannot control what they go after high school, but we can influence the skills our students carry with them and their mindset. So let's frame this around 3 areas I think are important. Literacy is going to be a core skill, even more so than now. You need to be literate in writing and reading. And yes, voice-activated AI will help circumvent your ability to write clearly, but once again, you need to be able to articulate verbally exactly what you want to do. And in some ways, I guess, building on top of literacy, we need numeracy and computational thinking skills. And lastly, we need human skills that AIs cannot easily replace. And this is moving beyond, say, a plumber. AI can't do that at this point, but at some point in the future, there may be robots or devices using AI that can do it, such as mine sites. We've got the robotic dogs now. At the moment, a lot of them controlled, but eventually they put AI in them, and they'll go in and check out mines and things like that, do search entirely autonomously using AI, and then report back to us. So once again, these will change over time. So when I turn this into something a bit more concrete, suggestions for things like maths, English, science, and the humanities, because every student does those. So literacy is a core skill, is my first point. I want to say this very clearly that you are right if you feel literacy sits at the heart of working with AI. Modern AI systems are fundamentally language engines. Students with strong reading and writing will find it much easier to explain a task clearly with the right context and constraints. Ask precise questions, break down complex problems in a series into smaller written steps, read outputs closely and decide whether they're actually correct and useful. When we talk about prompting, we are really talking about extended written literacy. A good prompt looks very much like a well-structured paragraph in English and history. There's a clear purpose, audience, tone, scaffolding, and often an example. Humanities students, therefore, do have a general initial advantage in this area. They spend years practicing close reading, working with evidence, adjusting tone, structure, and critiquing arguments. All that transfers directly into asking AI to draft emails, analysing documents, and suggest solutions. So from a school point of view, we do not see English humanities somehow separate from the AI conversations. They're actually central to it. The skills I learned then, and that's another reason when you talk to your students and say, why am I learning this? It's these skills and critical thinking and their literary skills that they apply within these learning areas. And of course, they do that in maths and science as well. But more so in the humanities and English, that explain to them. AI is going to use these skills. Wherever job or whatever you go into, you're learning these skills. We just do it in the context of English and history, for example. As I used to say to my students, we pick pieces of history we think hopefully educate you understand the world. But at the same time, we could do the history of jelly beans instead of the Vikings to teach you these same literacy, writing skills, critical thinking skills. But history is so interesting. We use it as a great vehicle to educate you. So get on dear English and humanities teachers. Explain to them how AI is important on terms of the skills they're actually teaching their students. And they communicate with their students and make them more relevant and more engaged in that learning area. The second point is things about adding numeracy and logic onto it. Because however literacy is on its own is not sufficient. You need to have those skills to how to analyze it. So AI skills in the workplace are increasingly connected to data, dashboards, decision-making systems. Many of the new roles we discussed involve reading charts, understanding metrics, checking out whether AI-generated recommendations make numerical sense. This means students also need to be comfortable with numeracy. Here comes our maths, here comes our, I'll say it again, our digital technologies that we do here in Australia, that working with a computer and how they interact. So numeracy, ability to interpret graphs, work with percentage and ratios, and reason about risk and uncertainty. It's great saying AI giving us that data, but we need to be able to assess whether that information is correct. That makes, particularly in risk-adverse environments or high-risk environments where a decision could affect someone's safety and well-being. Basic statistics, understanding averages, variations, correlations, limits of what data can actually do. And like computational thinking. And here in Australia, digital technology is compulsory for all year 7s and 8s. Not all schools do it, unfortunately. But the core of this, I think it's just computers, but it's that computational thinking, breaking problems into steps, recognizing patterns, using abstraction, and understanding basic algorithms feeds into an AI world. It also feeds into all other learning areas as well, because that's how we break problems down to solve. So in the Australian context, where mathematics and digital technologies come strongly into play, computational thinking is the outcome. Curriculum is no longer nice to have. They are part of the core toolkit for living and working in an AI world. A student who combines strong essay writing skills, source analysis, and solid general maths and, say, introductory coding will be extremely well positioned. And other data that have shown in the past simply is that coding actually increases students' literacy skills because it actually slows them down, makes sure on them to read to get everything exact, because obviously we get errors in compilers. You compile something that's not right. It actually teaches them that skill to do that fine reading and looking for errors and bugs and things, and they're translating things like grammar and punctuation in the English area because they're using their brain to find issues and making something bang on perfect. So the message, student, is not you must all become programmers, but rather do not drop your maths and digital thinking too early if you can help it, because your future will need that flexibility and that knowledge. As Steve Jobs said, when you go off to university, take calligraphy, take computing skills, take your maths, take your sciences, get a nice broad range of skills, because in the AI world, you'll use them all. And I really like the idea, personally, the Renaissance. People in the Renaissance were artists, now mathematicians, which today we try to categorize people one and the other, which is humans don't need to be that. We can build the Renaissance man or woman type skill where we have skills across a broad area of disciplines, and we can bring that into an AI world. And those people, honestly, I think will be far more successful. And the last one, obviously, is AI, human skills that AI cannot replace. So human skills in the environment, that what we can do better than the computer. Our brain is far more complex and capable than the most powerful AI system. AI systems are not creative. They cannot come up with new ideas. They come up with a balance of all the probability of this is the best idea based on what already exists in the world. So when we speak to employers, they really mention things like communication, teamwork, initiative and problem solving, reliability and time management, ethic, judgment and professionalism, the ability to learn new tools and adapt. And I think the last one is really important. As educators, is teaching students to learn new things and adapt continually, because that's something they'll need to do all the way through their working life. So AI will draft emails, summarize reports, suggest options, but it does not take away the responsibility for outcomes. It does not sit in a meeting with a distressed client. It does not supervise a work placement. It does not negotiate with a community group. Humans do that. Our students therefore need to practice things like group projects, where they manage their own timelines, divide tasks up, reflect on what worked, what didn't work, how they can improve next time. Classroom discussions where they consider the ethical implications of AI, things like policing, hiring, healthcare, education. And that's happening to some degree as well now with unions, at least in Australia. And I think the Writers' Union and their big strike in Hollywood, saying AI, putting it specifically, can't be used to replace their jobs. Hopefully they're using it to improve their things like productivity, their workflow, and their feedback. And we want to give them real-world experiences in part-time work, volunteering, BETS courses or TAFE here, where punctuality, communication, initiative matter. How often do you listen to a student that's late and you say to them, oh, you got to be on time? It shows their responsibility, organisational skills that your employees look for. And they say, but when I'm getting paid, I'll be on time. And the data shows they often aren't, because they develop those habits going through school. They can't suddenly switch those habits in their brain. It takes them a lot of effort and being intentional to change those habits when they go into the workforce. A lot of data outside AI is saying that's a real issue coming out of that. And like I said, these little things we do in school are preparing them work in a workplace. And it's like when I talk about students, I don't get on with my teacher. I said, you've got to learn to get on with the teacher because you're going to go into the workplace and you're going to have bosses you love and you're going to have bosses you don't get on with and might even despise. But you've got to learn to work with those bosses in your work context, particularly if you like the job, but you don't like your boss. So not liking teachers is fine, I tell them, but you've got to learn to work with them and meet their expectations. So these are the experiences that build confidence. Students who trust their ability to learn, to ask questions and handle complexity, and therefore they'll be less anxious when they step into these workplaces, whether AI or not. So how do we talk about this with our students? Let me offer you one simple message they might be able to use in the classroom, conversations or assemblies. It could be something like this. To prepare for work in the AI world, you need 3 things. You need strong literacy, read widely, write often, and practice clear, structured communication. 2 is comfort with numbers and logic. Keep engaging with maths and digital technology so data and algorithms don't scare you off, because they're going to be everywhere. And 3, human skills, your ability to work in teamwork, ethics, problem solving, initiative. AI can help you with this, but it cannot replace those. And therefore, when you're in the classroom and the teacher puts you in a group with people you don't like, that is teamwork. You've got to learn to adapt and work within those groups. For humanities, so have that conversation, repeat it, put it out repeatedly to your students. For humanities students, the reassurance is that their strengths are actually needed. So they've got interest in the literature, in the humanities, in English, there's history, geography, the civics. Those skills they learn there is now more important than ever. Then we can gently challenge them to get some mathematics, some digital learning so that they do not limit their future options. Give them a nice broad skills. For STEM-oriented students, the reassurance is that technical skills and interests are valuable, but we need to insist that their success will depend on the ability to explain, write clearly, and think about people and not only systems. And that's why getting involved in the humanities they bring into IT, which I love to do, is important. As I used to tell my students, that you can develop the best idea, the best app in the world, but if you don't understand how people work and interact with it, which is a humanities skill, it'll be a failure, no matter how good it is. Now, in terms of subject selections through a career lens, and this sort of mesh focus, which is the maths, English, science, and humanities. So I'm going to walk through some practical ideas in those mesh subjects, because this is where we can work out challenges. English, use AI drafting as a partner. Now, students to critique and improve the output, focusing on the argument, evidence, and tone. Teach explicit skills in writing instructions, guidelines, processes, not only narratives and essays. Because I know you do lots of areas. This is a different sort of writing. Encourage wide reading, including non-fiction, text on technology, work and society. So students have background knowledge when they encounter AI topics. And maths, highlight statistics, probability, and data interpretation as directly connected to AI and decision-making. Use simple examples of data-driven decisions. Use recommendations using systems or risk scores. Ask students to reason behind them. Encourage perseverance with at least general mathematics in the senior years where possible, emphasizing their supports almost every career, including highly human-centered ones. And you already know that. I know you already do that as maths teachers. For science, introduce AI tool for modeling, data analysis, and hypothesis generation, but always pair it with experimental evidence, critical evaluation. Discuss ethical issues, AI in medicine, environmental monitoring, genetics, link it to scientific knowledge with civic responsibility. Give students practice reading scientific charts and summaries that may have been generated with AI and check their validity. And in the humanities and the social sciences, use AI generate multiple interpretation of a historical event. Ask students to compare these with primary sources and establish scholarship. Explore how AI is changing work in different industries and regions, who benefit and who misses out. Engage with civic questions, who should regulate with AI, how it affects democracy. And that's a big one, particularly all the bot farms and things and the propaganda coming out, particularly places like Russia and China to influence things that happen in the West, because what we do. The big example of that, if you look at TikTok in China versus TikTok in the US and the content that's on there, they push things, but that's another completely different issue and discussion. And I guess look at things like what are rights of workers and increasingly automated workplaces. Like I said, It's already happening with some unions trying to protect their workers while still integrating AI. So across these areas, we can weave an explicit career conversation. Which parts of this subject is likely to be automated and which parts are deeply human? What does AI change in this profession and what does it not change? What skills from this subject will still matter in 20 years' time? And that's a hard one. And I don't think I could answer that, but it's a nice, fun, hypothetical we get students to do. Students hear that message consistently from different subject areas and see teachers modelling thoughtful use of AI rather than banning or fearing it, then they start to build a realistic and confident picture of their future. So from my perspective as a career practitioner, also someone who worked in IT and loved my history, the landscape looks like this. AI is creating generally new roles, reshaping many existing ones and squeezing the old entry-level pathway. Businesses are already adjusting their graduate hiring and the expectations of what job-ready person can actually do. And things like TAFE and universities will adapt to this. But whether the employees demand those qualifications or not, I cannot answer. In response, our task in high school is not to turn every student into a data scientist because they don't want to be that. And we don't want them, and we don't need that many of them. But our task is to ensure that every student leaves school with things like a strong literacy so they can think and communicate clearly with and without AI. Enough numeracy and computational thinking to handle data, logic, and digital tools. And human skills and ethical judgment that will remain in demand whatever technology arrives next. And that's also important whether going into the trades or into white-collar works. We shape these programs across the maths, English, science, and humanities with those strains in mind. We can then talk about AI honestly but calmly with our students. And we give them something extremely valuable, not a specific job guarantee, but the confidence and capability to navigate a changing world of work. And the work will continually changing. And it has been before the Industrial Revolution, but from the Industrial Revolution, it's changed rapidly and constantly, and the rate of change is accelerating and getting faster. And we want our students to adapt and work in such an environment. So remember, I know as teachers, you're already doing a lot of these things, but what you're emphasizing to the students and connecting the real world or the world outside, because I hate the term real world, to be honest. The kids are actually in their real world. Students, as being students and part-time workers, is their real world. What we're talking about is the work world or the further study world. But if we talk about these examples of what careers and things are using and how they're using it, how it's relevant to our subject, therefore, we're going to get our kids more interested. They see more opportunities, more than just a couple of jobs they hear about, and also hopefully increase their engagement and the reasons behind why they're doing the work. We're learning about the Vikings, they're great, but at the same time, we're developing these literacy skills, these critical analytical thinking skills behind that. So thanks for spending this time with me. As always, if you enjoy it, share it with a colleague. Subscribe to my podcast. I do see a lot of people, when I put it up, automatically get the downloads, which is absolutely fantastic. Share it with your colleagues, share it with the school. And if anyone would like to come on my podcast, I think I'm going to start mentioning this and you speak English, I'd love to hear a short interview like I've done with the teachers locally in person about how you're actually using AI, whether you're a beginner or you feel your whole school's roaring through it and using it in every aspect. Every story is important because we're all at different stages as we use AI. So thank you for spending the time with me. Keep up the good work and keep experimenting, keep trying and get on with it. Till next time, take care of yourself.